Hello everyone, and welcome to my last video of 3.5. We have 3.6 coming out tomorrow, and with it, Nahida's first rerun banner is also going to be released. Now, if you missed out on pulling this character on her first banner, you have your second chance, and I'm just going to tell you right now, TLDW, TLDR, if you don't want to read, watch the whole video or anything, if you think on whether or not she's worth pulling, I'm going to tell you right now, she is 100% worth it if you want to invest in your Dendro teams. It doesn't matter what kind of Dendro team you want to run, Hyperbloom, Burgeon, Aggravate, anything, Burning teams even. Nahida is going to be so insanely good at it. She applies so much Dendro off field really quickly and continues to be in a lot of popular teams using the Spiral Abyss. But if you're more on the casual side, she is also really useful for just exploring. Using her elemental skill makes things a lot more convenient for you. Now, if you want to know more in detail about why she's so good, you're going to have to stick around, as I'm going to go over everything, like the weapons, artifacts, constellations, talents, and some combat showcases with her. First off, let's look at the talents. And as you can see, mine are at 799. I definitely wanted to crown them at some point, but I am still working on getting those talent materials. But anyways, let's start with the normal attack. As you can see on the left hand side here, there's nothing special about them. There isn't any mechanics to it. She does have a normal 4-hit combo with her normal attack, and then she does a charge attack, which does like an AoE sort of damage, and the plunging attack, again, pretty standard. I should have some gameplay showcasing what the animations look like. But now we're gonna get easily into where her kit really shines, and it's gonna be in her elemental skill. It's called All Schemes to Know. Now there's two versions of it, but the first one you're not really gonna use. So there is a tap version. I don't know if it shows it in this long description here, but the tap version, Nahida just waves her hand and it does some Dendro damage. You're not really going to use this. This is more if you want to just finish off weaker enemies with her skill. But you definitely want to use the hold version of it, and that's where a lot of interesting things happen. So when you hold her elemental skill, it goes into like a camera viewfinder mode that I'm sure you're used to controlling now in this game. And when you do this, you can tag enemies with it. And once they're tagged, they're going to take Dendro damage periodically. So now we go into the secondary effect of her skill here. It's called the Seed of Skandha. Now, you can read up all this information once her character trial is out if you want to look at it for yourself. Or you can pause the vid right now. But basically, the enemies that you've marked with her skill, when you perform any elemental reaction on them that you can do with Dendro, of course, she will then do her, it's called the Trikarma Purification. Basically, this is what it's called when they take periodic damage while affected by her elemental skill. So it'll apply, if we look at the skill attributes, it will apply normally every 2.5 seconds, but if you do elemental reactions, you'll also do an additional one. So as long as you tagged all the enemies on the field and you're constantly doing elemental reactions, all enemies that were tagged will also receive that damage. So this makes Nahida a really strong character versus multiple enemies, and you don't actually need an Anemo character like Kazuha or Venti to group them up for you. You can use her skill, tag a bunch of enemies, and then no matter where they're at, they're going to take damage. This is really useful in stuff like the Spiral Abyss. And yes, you still can tag bosses with this skill, and they'll also take the additional damage when you're doing elemental reactions. And honestly, this is probably the most important thing to know about Nahida's kit and what makes her so unique and really strong as a Dendro applicator. And again, she just needs to tag her enemies, and then she can just be off the field for a very long time. It lasts a while. That Seed of Skandha duration is 25 seconds. And this skill has a really low cooldown, even the hold version, of only 6 seconds. Really strong skill, and it scales off Nahida's attack and elemental mastery Very, very powerful. Probably one of the best elemental skills in the game. Not only that, I forgot to mention, for those that like to play casually or you're just exploring, you can actually use her skill to gather plants. Plants, flowers, stuff like that. You can't use it on things like, you know, like the crystal core butterflies or mining materials and stuff like that, but you can use her viewfinder mode to scan for plants, and you'll see a little symbol. Should have some gameplay showing it right now, and you'll actually be able to gather plants at a distance, so it saves you a lot of time in climbing if you just quickly use Nahida's elemental skill for this. So even if you don't have any Spiral Abyss plans, just using her in general is just highly recommended. Next up, we have her burst, which is also a really good elemental burst. It's very simple. She's going to do a long animation. It does have quite a wind-up, but it's going to have a gigantic AoE. If you've played Dendro Traveler, it's pretty much similar, but again, just way larger AoE. And depending on what elements you are using with Nahida when they're in the AoE of the Shrine of Maya, which it's very hard to leave it, but depending on what element you're using, so if you see on the left here, we have Pyro, Electro, or Hydro, because those are the only elements that work with Dendro. If you're using a Pyro character and they're inside the AoE, the damage that enemies take from the Trikarma Purification is going to be increased if you're using Pyro. The interval between Trikarma Purification damage is going to be decreased. So this means they're just going to be taking more damage from Hydro, or excuse me, from her Dendro skill, elemental skill, excuse me, more often. And then if you're using Hydro, the duration of her burst is going to be increased. So if we take a look at the attributes, you can see that it actually rewards you for not just having one character, but you can have up to 2 characters for increased effects. So if you see, if you have 2 Pyro characters, then the damage from her Trikarma Purification is going to be increased by almost 40%, or sorry, 38%. If you have Electro with 2 characters, then the interval is going to be decreased by 0.63 seconds. So it was 2.5 on the elemental skill, which we saw. So this would make it 1.87 seconds or something like that. I think I did the math correctly there. And then if you have 2 Hydro characters, then the burst will be extended by a whopping 8.53 seconds. Now, this is definitely a talent you want to consider crowning, because if you do, it actually will increase the effects of all of these. So you can see Pyro, if you have 2 characters, it's going to be 40% increased damage. Electro, it's going to decrease it by up to 0.67. This is a very strong burst, and it has so many effects depending on what characters you bring. And this is a big reason why Nahida is just so good in so many teams with so many characters. You have all these different effects that can occur. Not to mention, this burst only has a 50 energy cost. For what it does, that's insane. Which means that when it comes to energy recharge, you'll need some for Nahida just so she can, you know, burst, you know, off cooldown. But you don't need to invest into it heavily. Let's take a look at the passive talents. So we have Compassion Illuminated. Basically, when you use your burst, Nahida will share 25% of her elemental mastery with the active party member. This is very similar to an effect that Sucrose has. You can share a maximum of 250 elemental mastery this way. So if your Nahida has 1000 elemental mastery and you use her burst, then you swap to another character. That character that is in the Shrine of Maya will get 250 elemental mastery. That is huge damage boost. I mean, even if you don't have the maximum 1000, let's say you only have 800 elemental mastery, which is, you know, that's more doable, right? Then you're still getting 200 elemental mastery, which is still a huge damage boost. So if you're looking to wonder how much, you know, elemental mastery a Nahida should have, somewhere from 800 to 1000, you can probably get away with probably even less than 800. Next up, we have Awakening Elucidated. This makes it so your elemental mastery beyond 200, which is very easy to achieve, is going to give you additional. This is going to grant you additional damage and additional crit rate to your elemental skill, which is again how she does the majority of her damage. Very strong talent. Makes it so that you're not losing out on other stats by heavily investing into elemental mastery. Gives you some nice crit rate there, and then you can focus on getting some crit damage on your artifacts if you can. And then her passive talent is what I was mentioning earlier. If you use her elemental skill on like plants, you can even use this on NPCs. This isn't a gameplay advantage in any way. It's more of like a casual, interesting kind of gimmicky thing. Next up, let's take a look at weapon options for Nahida. Now, obviously, you can see I have her signature weapon here, which is going to be her best in slot, of course. There's even a 3-star option for Nahida. I forgot to mention the Magic Guide. This is a 3-star weapon that gives you Elemental Mastery as a substat. I didn't max mine out because this was in case I didn't pull the 5-star weapon kind of thing. If you're free to play or you're new and you just don't have a lot of weapons for her, Magic Guide, easy weapon effect. They're just going to make opponents affected by Hydro or Electro take extra damage. It gives her Elemental Mastery. It's solid. If you're looking for 4-star options, honestly, any weapon that gives you Elemental Mastery as a substat. So we're looking at Sacrificial Fragments, even though she doesn't really need the weapon effect here because she has such a short cooldown and long duration of her elemental skill. This isn't really needed on her, but Sacrificial Fragments does give you quite a bit of Elemental Mastery, which is why it's pretty good on her. Another option could be the Mappa Mare. Also gives you Elemental Mastery. And with that being said, you can also opt in to go for more damage-oriented weapons, like a Widsith, if you want her to have more crit damage. Lost Prey of the Sacred Winds if you have one. Skyward Atlas if you have one. Tons and tons of options. So it really depends on what you want, but I recommend just going for something easy, just some extra Elemental Mastery on her. Artifacts. When it comes to choosing a set and the substats, it's pretty easy. There is a domain that has both of the sets that she basically uses, and it's going to be your choice of either the Deepwood Memory set or Gilded Dreams. Now, how do you decide between the two is quite easy. If you have another Dendro teammate, or actually just another teammate in general that has the Deepwood Memory set, then you do not need to give this to Nahida, because this effect of the Deepwood Memories does not stack, and you only need it once. So if you have a teammate that has Deepwood Memories, then you can go force 4-piece Gilded Dreams for Nahida. If not, then Deepwood Memories is your go-to option. And if you're looking for what subsets to look for, of course, Elemental Mastery is going to be the big one. Energy Recharge has some importance, but not, again, it's a 50 cost Elemental Burst, so you don't need to go too hard on Energy Recharge, just, again, enough to where she can burst off cooldown reliably. Once you've met your Energy Recharge requirements, then it goes down in priority, and you're going to want to get the usual crit rate, crit damage, substats, and attack percentage. And then for the main stats of the other 3 artifact pieces, we have the Sands. I'm not happy with how this rolled, to be honest, or the substats on this one, but hey, it is a main stat, Elemental Mastery Sands. There, Goblet, you can go for Dendro damage or Elemental Mastery. Here, and then for the Circlet, also again Elemental Mastery or crit damage slash crit rate, depending on how you want to build your Nahida. If you're okay with your Nahida having like 800 Elemental Mastery, then you can start going in for those other damaging substats. I'm gonna be honest with you, these Constellations are OP, especially the first 2. It is definitely not going to be a waste of your money if you decide to go for additional Constellations, but be financially responsible is all I'm saying, okay? They're good. I'm going to tell you why they're good in a sec here, but are they needed? Do you absolutely have to have them? No, but they're really neat, and I'm going to show them to you now. So the first one is the Seed of Stored Knowledge. This is going to make it so that your burst basically has the addition of 1 Pyro, Electro, and Hydro character. So if you remember back in the talent section when we were talking about the burst, it gets added effects based on the amount or the elements in your team, right? Well, now with this, it's going to count as you having Pyro, Electro, and Hydro at least once, no matter what your team is. So even if your team doesn't have any Pyro characters, you're going to get a damage boost as if you did have a Pyro character in your team. Or if you don't have any Electro, then you're going to get, that one. So that means you only need to bring 1 character of these 3, these 3 elements to get the secondary effect. So you don't need to bring 2 Electro to get the maximum interval reduction, or you don't need to bring 2 hydro to get the maximum increased duration of the burst. You know what I mean? Next up, we have the Root of All Fullness, which is going to make your elemental skill basically better. So if you do any of the following reactions, Burning, Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon, they have a crit rate chance of 20% and crit damage of 100% respectively. Or if you decide to do Quicken, Aggravate, or Spread, then your opponent's defense are going to be decreased by 30%. Huge damage increases here no matter what team you're running. In fact, you might even be able to get both, because sometimes elemental damage is just going off crazy, and sometimes you'll get some Quicken or Aggravates in there when you're a Hyper Bloom team or something like that. C3 and C5, we already know, are going to be +3 to skill and burst, and of course, those are great for Nahida. It just means more damage overall. C4 is just going to give her more elemental mastery depending on how many enemies you've tagged with her elemental skill, with a maximum of 4 enemies giving you 160 elemental mastery. That is huge. Another way to think about this is that it will lower the requirements of Nahida's elemental mastery. C6, the Fruit of Reason's Culmination. Now this is quite a long constellation, so I'll just quickly sum it up. This is going to make Nahida more of a main DPS here, as it's going to make enemies that are once again affected by your elemental skill take lots of dendro damage from Nahida, whether she uses a normal or charged attack. In fact, it's going to be based off her attack and elemental mastery. And yeah, it's basically just going to make her a main on-field DPS if you wanted to do that with her. Alright, next up is going to be team comps with Nahida here. And, well, like I said earlier, she can work in just about any team you throw her in, as long as you're, no matter what kind of dendro team you're trying to make. So here we have an Aggravate team example with Yao Yao, Nahida, Yaimiko, and Ryan Shogun. But honestly, again, she will work with anybody. There's another team where we use Nahida. This is my Barbara Bloom team that I've been working on. This is just another example of what you could use. Nilo is also going to be in the banner right next to Nahida. And that is also a very strong combination, just like how in the last banner that we just had, if you're watching this in 3.6, which most of you will, Ayaka and Shenhe were a strong combo together. Well, Nahida and Nilo are going to be a very strong combo together as well. No matter what type of dendro reaction team you're trying to go for or trying to make, Nahida is definitely going to be a key teammate in those team comps. Alright, usually I go to that one domain with like 20 wolves in it to showcase Nahida's, or any character's combat abilities, but for Nahida's case, I'm gonna do just a short domain run here, because there's only 3 enemies here, and I'm just gonna show you how I use her. I mainly do use her as an off-field dendro applicator, but again, you can use her as on-field, even pre-C6 if you want to, for Bloom teams, and those will also work really well. So to start, I don't have my burst, but I would use it after my skill. But I always hold it, and then you scan the enemies. Whoops. Oh my goodness, I should have bought a shield. And try to look at the numbers. See how the guy on the left is still taking damage, even though he's not my main target. It's hard to showcase that. But you saw, I hope you were able to see that I tagged all 3 enemies, and then you saw me, I tried to, actually focus one off to the side, just to show you the Trikarma Purification damage was still being applied to all the tagged enemies. So this is why Nahida is also really strong as a dendro applicator, is because you don't actually have to group them up like you would need for other team comps. As long as Nahida tags them, you do your elemental reactions, they will take that Trikarma Purification damage. It's also really hard to showcase a character that's mainly off-field. I didn't even get to use my burst there because the fight was just over so fast. That's probably why I like to use the longer wolf domain, but... Alright, we have the burst this time, so I'm actually going to try to showcase it in the same fight again. So we're going to use Nahida's skill, then burst. I'm just going to toss out everyone else's burst so that we can power up Raiden's. Oh, they're pretty much dead by the time Raiden got her burst out. But yeah, if you've ever seen any of my Spiral Abyss videos and you've seen me use Nahida, you might have seen me use your skill and then do this really fast. I'm not trying to give you a headache or make you dizzy or whatever. That's honestly the best way to apply the Denja with their skill, especially in the Abyss when they spawn enemies, not just in front of you, but like all around you. I'll do something like this really fast and just spin my mouse. Spin with my mouse. And with that being said, that is going to be a wrap on this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions that I didn't cover with Nahida, let me know in the comments down below. I'll do my best to try to answer them. Good luck to y'all that are pulling for Nahida in 3.6. She is an amazing character, as I've been saying this whole video, and hopefully you get to see how amazing she is in 3.6. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you in the next video.